I only broke one rule. Just one. And now she stands outside my window every night smiling like she knows how it ends. The ad said $400 a month utilities included 5th floor walk-up. A price like that doesn't exist in the city unless something's very, very wrong. I should have known. I should have walked away when I saw the hallway. The stairs creaked like brittle bones under my weight, and the air reeked of mildew. And something else. Something sweet and sour like fruit left too long in the sun. The kind of smell that sticks to your teeth. The walls were yellowed, water-stained with dark blotches that looked like they'd been growing for years. The light above flickered in a 3-pulse rhythm, buzzing like it was trying to speak. It wasn't just a broken bulb. It felt intentional. Apartment 4B sat at the very end of the corridor, its door painted an unnatural shade of green, sickly peeling like skin with a rash. There was something about it, not the way it looked, the way it waited, like it knew I was coming. My hand shook when I reached for the key, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, like my instincts were screaming in a language I hadn't spoken since childhood. The lock fought me. The air behind that door felt heavy, alive. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Just another cheap apartment, just a bad paint job, just old pipes and creaky floorboards. But as I pushed the door open, I swear to God, it sighed. There's something wrong with silence when it feels like it's listening to you breathe. I stepped into apartment 4B for the first time with a box in my arms and something cold tightening around my spine. The door creaked shut behind me like it was reluctant to let go of the hallway. The lock clicked, and just like that I was inside. Alone. Or I thought I was. The place was small, studio layout, low-ceiling window facing a trash-filled alley that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight since the Clinton administration. Yellowed walls curled at the edges like old parchment. The carpet brown-gray crusted, and so stained it felt like it had absorbed stories it didn't want to give back. There was a shape worn into the floor near the wall like a couch, or maybe a body had once laid there too long. I tried to laugh it off, but the laugh caught in my throat. The air was wrong. Stale, yes, but underneath it was something sour like wet rags forgotten in a locked trunk. It hit the back of my tongue, thick and cloying. I opened the single window for fresh air, but all it offered was the alley's perfume, old grease garbage, and cat piss. I took a step forward, and the floor groaned under me, a long moan that felt personal, like the apartment itself was reacting to my presence. That's when I noticed the mirror. Hung crooked above the kitchen sink, the mirror was cheap and cracked in the corner, but clean. Too clean. As I passed it, I glanced at my reflection and froze. I looked fine, but not right. There was a slight lag. I blinked, and my reflection blinked half a beat later. Barely noticeable. Could have been the light, could have been my nerves, but I knew what I saw. It wasn't showing me, it was showing what I thought I looked like. I forced myself to unpack. Small things. Coffee mugs. A box of instant ramen. A photo frame still wrapped in newspaper. Anything to distract from the crawling sensation just beneath my skin, the unspoken pressure that made me want to keep looking over my shoulder even though the room was empty. I stared at the boxes piled in the corner, trying to convince myself this was just another move. Another cheap apartment. Another chance to start over. But my eyes kept drifting to the box marked photos. I hadn't opened it yet. I was afraid of what might be missing. Or what might have changed. I finally peeled the tape and reached in, pulling out a small wooden frame. It was a photo of Kayla, my sister. She was smiling, wide-haired, tied back, wearing my oversized hoodie like she used to in high school. It had always been my favorite picture of her because she looked so alive, so stubbornly bright in a world that never felt safe. I remember the night before I moved here, Kayla begged me not to take the apartment. She'd read the listing and said no one rents that cheap unless they're desperate or cursed L. I'd laughed it off, told her it was fine, that I'd finally found somewhere I could afford. But standing there now holding that photo, my chest tightened. Because I couldn't remember the last time I'd called her. I couldn't even remember the sound of her voice. Just flashes of ringtone that used to make me smile. Her laugh echoing off the kitchen tiles. Her leaning and eyes wide, whispering secrets meant only for siblings who survived childhood together. The shadows in the apartment seemed to press closer, as if listening to my memories. The photo frame felt heavier in my hand, and then for a moment so quick I almost missed it, I swore the photo changed. Kayla's eyes were still wide, but her smile had faded. Her lips were parted like she was trying to speak. And behind her, the background of the picture, our old living room, had turned into peeling yellow walls and a window facing an alley that hadn't seen sunlight since the Clinton administration. I blinked, and the photo was normal again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment wasn't just learning me. It was learning the people I loved, cataloging them, preparing to use them. And deep down I knew if this place wanted to own me completely, it wouldn't come for me first. It would come for Kayla. That's when the dripping started, steady, methodical. From the kitchen sink, one drop, then another. Each one landed with a metallic plink that echoed louder than it should have in such a cramped space. I twisted the handle. No use. The dripping wasn't from the faucet, it was from the drain. I leaned closer. The pipes gave off a faint hum like singing. No, not singing. Breathing. I jerked back, heart hammering in my chest. Told myself it was nothing. Old buildings make noise. That's what people say, right? Old pipes, settling foundations, drafts and echoes. So why did it feel like I had stepped into a mouth? Every object had weight, not physical, but emotional. The cabinet doors hung slightly ajar like mouths waiting to speak. The fridge hummed too steadily, too smoothly, as if it was covering something up. Even the shadows didn't behave. They stretched too far. They shifted when I wasn't looking. And the worst part, there were no sounds from other tenants. No TV through the walls, no footsteps above. Just the building breathing and watching. I wasn't alone. I was being tolerated. I sat down on the sagging mattress the previous tenant left behind. It groaned like it remembered something I didn't want to know. My phone buzzed, low battery. No service. I remember thinking, okay, one night. Just one night. If it still feels this weird in the morning, I'm out. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks. Soft. Deliberate. Not from the door. From the wall. Right behind my bed. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The knocks didn't repeat. But I knew with an awful certainty. Something knew I was here. And whatever it was, it had been waiting. You ever meet someone who smiles like they've already decided how you're going to die? I had just finished stacking the last of the moving boxes in the corner. The room still felt wrong, like I was squatting in someone else's unfinished nightmare. I was facing the window when I heard it. 3 knocks. Soft. Measured. Not the wall this time. The door. I froze. I hadn't ordered food. No one knew I'd moved in. I didn't even tell my sister yet. My mind flipped through rational options, landlord, neighbor, but none of them felt right. I took a breath, crossed the room, and peered through the peephole. There she was, a woman, pale, perfectly still, smiling. At first, nothing about her screamed danger, but nothing whispered safe either. I opened the door just a crack. That was all it took. She didn't flinch, she didn't blink. She just spoke. I'm Clara. I live down the hall. You'll like it here, Elliot. My blood went cold. I never told her my name. Not out loud, not to anyone. It was on the lease, sure, but that paperwork wasn't public. Maybe she overheard something. Maybe she was just friendly, but her smile said otherwise. Her smile said, I've been waiting. It stretched too far. Her lips pulled back tight over teeth that were too uniform, too perfect, like she'd borrowed them. Her skin looked like it hadn't seen sunlight since birth, pale with a hint of gray like porcelain that had been buried and dug up again. And the way she stood unmoving, like a prop in a haunted house waiting for the right trigger to spring to life. Thanks. I managed, trying to mirror her smile and failing miserably. I'm sure I will. Her eyes didn't leave me. They were gray, foggy, like old TV static trapped behind glass. And when she blinked, it didn't look right. Her eyelids moved, but her eyes didn't. A mechanical blink. Like a doll. She tilted her head sharply. Too sharp. It came with a subtle crack like someone twisting bubble wrap. The building has its own rhythm. She said each word pronounced like she was reading lines from a script someone else wrote. You'll learn. Her smile didn't move. Her lips stayed frozen even as she spoke like a ventriloquist's dummy. I nodded again. Polite. Controlled. My gut screamed run, but my feet didn't listen. Welcome home, she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. Only, she didn't walk. Her feet moved, yes, but there was no sound. No creak. No pressure on the old wooden floor. Just a slow, silent glide, like she weighed nothing at all. I closed the door slowly, locked it, bolted it, and then stood there for a full minute trying to make sense of what just happened. She knew my name. She blinked like a machine, and her smile never moved. This wasn't just a weird neighbor. This was something else. I backed away from the door one step at a time. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched, inhaled, recorded. A breeze drifted in from the hallway before the door fully latched. It carried something foul and sweet, the same smell I couldn't name earlier. Like fruit soaked in formaldehyde. Like breath held too long. I turned around. Everything looked the same. Boxes, couch, sink, mirror. But everything felt different. Like the walls had memorized me. Like the shadows were practicing my silhouette. I shook it off. Tried to focus on the real. She's just a neighbor, I told myself. Just another tenant. But deep down, I already knew. Whatever she was. Clara wasn't here to welcome me. She was here to make sure I stayed. If something gives you exactly what you want, ask what it's taking in return. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it the hum. Not mechanical, not natural. A low, steady vibration that seemed to pulse through the pipes, the walls, the air itself. It matched my heartbeat. No, not matched, it controlled it. Like my body had synced to something older, deeper, and not entirely physical. At 3:12 a.m., I snapped awake to the sound of metal. My keys had fallen. But I hadn't touched them. They were hanging on a brand new hook I'd drilled into the drywall. I tested it twice. Sturdy. No reason to fall. Yet there they were on the floor. Cold. Metallic. Twisted just slightly as if someone had dropped them deliberately. I walked over. Picked them up. And that's when I noticed the paper. Taped inside the upper kitchen cabinet. Yellowed. Folded. Tucked behind a loose panel like it didn't want to be found. I peeled it out with shaking fingers. It was a list. Written in desperate, cramped handwriting. A set of rules. Not a warning. Not a plea. A survival manual. Rules for living in 4B. Follow them or die. Never look any tenant from the 5th floor in the eyes for more than 3 seconds. If they speak to you, respond politely but never initiate. Leave a glass of water outside your door each night. Do not ask what drinks it. Do not open the door if you hear your name from the walls. Never be in the hallway after midnight. Never invite anyone in. Never thank them. Never speak their names. The blessings are real, but the price is worse. They are not human. They wear human faces. They will give you what you crave. But they will take everything else. You are being watched. From inside the walls. Signed only M. I sat down on the couch with the note in my hands, rereading it over and over until the lines blurred. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't fiction. It felt like someone had written it in the middle of a panic attack with trembling hands and time running out. I didn't know what to believe. Until the blessings started. That morning I bent over to plug in my laptop. For months I'd had this sharp burning pain in my lower back from freelancing too much, bending drawing hours of bad posture. I was halfway into a stretch when I froze. No pain. None. Not even a twinge. I twisted, flexed. Nothing. Like someone had erased a decade of damage from my spine overnight. Coincidence, right? Then came the email. Subject line. Great work on Morrison pitch. Excited to see more. From my supervisor. The kind who never emails unless something's on fire. I'd worked 18 hours straight on that pitch deck. Bleeding from the eyes. Coffee, rum, and adrenaline. I wasn't expecting praise. I was expecting edits. But there it was. Clean. Positive. Professional. Then came the refund. $312.27. My student loan provider sent a notification overpayment credited due to processing error. I didn't ask for it. I didn't request anything. But the number was perfect, just enough to buy groceries, pay rent, and cover my late Wi-Fi bill. It was exactly what I needed. Not more. Not less. That's what chilled me. Not the kindness of it, but the precision. Too accurate. Too tailored. Like something had read me. Calculated me. Scanned my mind and found just enough to keep me obedient. At first I tried to tell myself it was luck. Or coincidence. But the more blessings arrived, the more I started to feel hollow. It began with my back. The pain was gone, sure, but so was everything else. One morning I bent to tie my shoe and realized I couldn't feel the floor under my fingers. My lower back was numb. No nerves, no warmth. Just blank flesh, like someone had scrubbed away the memory of sensation. I slapped my skin, desperate to feel something. Nothing. Just the faint echo of pressure, as if my body belonged to someone else. Then the email from my supervisor. The praise felt good for about 5 seconds, until I read the signature block and saw the man's name. But my supervisor had been dead for over a year. A heart attack in his office. Closed casket. I'd attended the funeral. Stood there in a suit that smelled like mothballs, shaking his wife's trembling hand. So how was he emailing me at 2:07 a.m.? I tried replying. The email bounced back with an error I'd never seen. Recipient does not exist. And the refund, the $312.27, that felt like a miracle. At first, I laughed, thinking the universe was cutting me a break. I paid my overdue Wi-Fi bill, bought groceries, even splurged on a better lock for the door. But that night, I lay in bed and realized I couldn't remember my sister's phone number, Kayla, the one person I'd been clinging to in my memories. I scrolled through my contacts. Her name was gone, as if she'd never existed. My photos were still there, but every picture where she'd been smiling beside me was now a frame of me alone. A coffee shop, a park bench, an empty seat where Kayla used to be. I tried calling my parents. My father answered. When I asked him how Kayla was doing, he went silent. Then in a trembling voice he said, "Elliot, you've never had a sister." My throat closed up. I dropped the phone. The apartment wasn't giving me blessings. It was making room. Room for itself. Room for its rules. And every time it granted me relief, a painless spine, a refund, praise, it erased a piece of the life I thought I'd built. It wasn't rewarding me. It was editing me. And I started to realize the scariest part wasn't losing my memories. It was how easy it became to stop caring that they were gone. And outside my door, the glass of water I left half as a joke was empty. Bone dry. But the air around it smelled like rotted sweetness, and something that had been alive far too long. They weren't just rewarding me, they were testing how easy I was to please. It was subtle at first. Things you could explain away if you wanted to believe the world still made sense. A slight echo in the room that didn't match my movements. A reflection in the window that lagged half a second behind. The fridge door that clicked shut at night even when I was alone and had never opened it. I told myself I was tired. Told myself new places play tricks on the brain. Told myself old buildings creak and breathe and groan with age. But deep down something primal already knew this place wasn't just old, it was watching. Not figuratively, literally. I felt it in the floorboards, in the walls, in the way the bathroom mirror always felt an inch too far away, like the glass was pulling itself back. One morning, I opened the fridge to grab juice and found my keys inside, resting next to the orange juice bottle frosted over, like they'd been sitting there all night. I hadn't put them there. I would have remembered. And if I'd been sleepwalking, I'd have known by now. But there they were, ice cold and metal sharp in my hand, like some invisible hand had placed them there with intention. That's when I stopped pretending this was just bad sleep. Something in this place was playing by different rules. Not haunted, not exactly. It felt more like the apartment was a puzzle, and I'd accidentally started solving it from the wrong side. The hallway light, which had always flickered erratically, began doing so in patterns, 3 short pulses, 1 long repeat. I started timing it. It never changed. Morse code, maybe, I didn't know, but it felt like something trying to speak. And when I stared too long at the pulses, I'd get these headaches behind my eyes, like the light was drilling something into my brain just below conscious recognition. The water in the bathroom tap started tasting like copper. The air felt thicker, like walking through molasses. And the silence. It wasn't silence. It was pressure. Like a mouth pressed shut just before a scream. One night, as I tried to fall asleep, I heard footsteps from the ceiling above, heavy, slow, deliberate. But the landlord had told me the 6th floor was completely vacant. I counted them. 7 steps. Then pause. Then 7 again. Back and forth. Like someone pacing. Waiting. The sound stopped right above my bed and stayed there. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the ceiling and counted the seconds in my head until the weight of it passed. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of mirrors with no reflections, hallways that looped in on themselves, and a voice behind a wall whispering my name backwards. When I woke up, the hallway smelled like mold and sugar. The glass of water I'd left outside was bone dry again, and scratched faintly into the wood beneath it was a single word carved in uneven strokes: obey. The building wasn't haunted, it wasn't cursed, it was intelligent, it was structured. It had rules because it had a system. Blessings weren't gifts, they were conditioning tools. I realized then, the fuoklan toin hanjuok, het jiao long huan tho email kan ngoi jeo hong fai ngao nien. Chung juoch tin tuan, moi mon kwa la mot dai troi bang vang. The more I accepted, the tighter they pulled. This wasn't a place to live in. It was a place to serve. And somehow I had already signed the contract just by walking through the door. This wasn't my apartment. It was theirs. I was just renting space in their game of reality. It started with the food. I'd ordered Thai, same place I used to love back in my old neighborhood. Pad CU with beef 2 spring rolls, extra sauce. The delivery guy showed up 20 minutes later, but the second I opened the door, he froze like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes widened, fixed on something behind me, and his voice dropped to a whisper when he said, Just leave it on the floor, okay? Before I could ask anything, he dropped the bag, turned and walked too fast back toward the stairs, never looking back. I closed the door confused, but then I heard it footsteps, not from behind me, from the hallway. I turned slowly, and there she was again. Clara. Standing at the far end exactly like last time, pale, still, smiling. Her head was tilted at that same unnatural angle, like someone had bent her too far and she forgot to straighten. She didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. That smile never faded. Her eyes never blinked. Just that quiet, mechanical stare, like I was the only page in a book she'd read 1,000 times. I tried to play it normal. "Hey, Clara," I said, voice dry, "how are you?" She didn't respond, just stood there. But something had changed. She felt heavier. Not physically, just more present. Like the hallway didn't just contain her, it was built for her. The way the shadows curved inward, the way the lights buzzed a little louder when she stood beneath them. It was like the building adjusted itself to suit her shape. I shut the door. Fast, turned the lock, twisted the deadbolt twice, and leaned my weight against the wood. My heart was hammering. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 line. "Watch yourself." That was it. No name, no punctuation. Just a warning that arrived exactly when it needed to. I brought the food inside, but I couldn't eat it. It smelled wrong. Too salty. Too metallic. Like something pretending to be meat. The sauce had a slick film across it, almost iridescent like oil in a puddle. I pushed it away after 2 bites. Then came the smell. Not from the food, but from the hallway. That same sweet rot I'd noticed before now, stronger, sharper, laced with something bitter underneath. Like sugar on top of something decaying. I checked the peephole. Clara was gone, but the scent remained. A presence laced into the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd never actually left, that maybe she wasn't walking away at all, just pausing in a place I couldn't see, waiting for me to come out again. I tried to focus on work, freelance stuff, nothing exciting. But I couldn't think. Every sound made me jump. Pipes hissing, floorboards cracking, lights buzzing. It was like the apartment wanted to remind me it was alive, that everything inside it had eyes. I was looking for coffee filters in the cabinet when I found it. taped inside the door, tucked behind an old menu. Another note. Different handwriting this time. Same panic in the strokes. It was just 3 words: she never leaves. My hand went cold, my breathing shallow, because deep down I already knew. Clara didn't live here. Clara wasn't visiting. She wasn't a neighbor. She was part of the architecture, built into the walls like rot, like mold that had learned to smile. I checked the hallway again, still empty, but I didn't believe it. I closed the door and locked it again. Then I checked it 3 more times just to be sure. And still somewhere in my head I heard her whisper. Not in words, but in a sensation. A thought that didn't belong to me. "You're adjusting well, Elliot. Keep going." And just like that, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of Clara showing up. I was afraid of the day when she wouldn't. Because if she ever left, it meant they didn't need to warn me anymore. It meant I already belonged to them. Her smile wasn't a greeting. It was a leash. I didn't see Clara again for 3 nights. And when she finally came back, it was different. She knocked only once, this time a single deliberate rap that sounded almost gentle. I opened the door an inch, expecting that frozen smile, those doll's eyes. But when I looked at her, she seemed smaller, like something was draining out of her. She was still pale, still too still. But her eyes looked tired, clouded like storm glass. She didn't smile. She just stared at me for a long moment, as though trying to remember why she'd come. "Clara," I whispered. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past me into the apartment, scanning every corner as if searching for someone hiding in the shadows. Then in a voice so low I barely caught it, she said, "This place remembers everything." I swallowed hard. What does that mean? She blinked. Too slow. Too mechanical. But when her eyes opened again, something had changed. They shimmered, not just gray anymore, but threaded with faint gold, like the edge of an old photograph catching light. "There was a time," she said softly, "when I had a brother. Like you." The words hit me like ice water. His name was Theo. He moved here first. Said he'd found a place we could finally afford. I came to visit him one night, and when I knocked, he opened the door, but he wasn't my brother anymore. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "What happened to him?" I managed. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "This place took him, piece by piece. His voice, his memories. His face was the last thing to go. And when it was over, they offered me the vacancy." Her lips twitched then, as if wanting to smile but couldn't remember how. "I'm what's left. The face they use, the neighbor they send. Because people listen better to a neighbor than to a warning scratched on a wall." She tilted her head to that same sharp angle that always made my skin crawl. But this time, her voice softened. Almost human. "I'm not here to haunt you, Elliot. I'm here to train you. Because the building always needs someone to greet the next tenant." A tremor ran through me as she leaned closer, lowering her voice until I felt her breath cold on my cheek. "The building has its rhythm. Learn it, or it'll write you out like it did Theo." I stared at her, searching her face for any flicker of the woman she might have been. For a moment I thought I saw tears pool in her eyes. But then she blinked, and they were gone. Without another word, she stepped back into the hallway. And this time she didn't glide away like before. Her footsteps made sound, soft, hesitant, almost human. And for the first time I realized Clara wasn't just part of the architecture. She was its prisoner. It was almost 100 a.m. when I heard my name again. Not through the door, not from the hallway. This time it came from inside the wall, whispered, drawn out, low like it had been chewing on the syllables for hours. "Elliot!" At first I froze, not from fear but from recognition. The voice was familiar, my sister's, or something that wore her tone like a mask. That's what made me answer. Just 2 words, barely a whisper. "I'm here." The second I said it, the temperature in the room dropped. No warning, no creaks. Just a sudden, perfect silence, like every molecule of air had been vacuumed out of the space around me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't swallow. And then I heard it. Not the voice again. The slow sound of something dragging itself inside the wall. It moved behind the sheetrock, slow, deliberate, hungry. Like nails on skin. Like something blind that only moves when you speak. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs locked. My throat went dry. The walls began to hum, not loud but deep, like bass you feel in your ribs. My reflection in the mirror across the room blinked late, one eye at a time, and smiled before I did. I backed away. I didn't scream. I just waited, praying I hadn't woken it. But it was too late. I had answered. I had broken rule number 5. Something inside the building had marked me now. Not metaphorically. I mean, I could feel it like static crawling across my skin, like ink soaking into paper that used to be mine. The next morning there was blood in the hallway. Not splattered, not dramatic. Just a single crimson line across the wall stretching from my door to Clara's. A message. Or a path. The water in the bathroom turned black. Thick. Viscous. When I touched it, it clung to my fingers like tar, then melted into the skin without a trace. The lights started flickering in new rhythms. Not 3 short, 1 long anymore. Now it was 6 flashes. Pause. 6 more. Like it was counting something. Measuring how long I had left. My laptop wouldn't turn on. My phone restarted itself every 5 minutes. No signal. No messages. The apartment was severing me from the world. Quietly. Methodically. Caging me in. I tried to open the door that night to leave. It wouldn't budge. The lock turned, the bolt slid, but the door wouldn't open. Not stuck. Not jammed. Just holding me there. Like it was waiting for a decision I hadn't made yet. That's when the whisper came again. Right behind me. Not from the wall, from inside the room. Why did you answer? I turned. Nothing there. Except the mirror. And in the reflection, just for a second, I wasn't alone. Something stood behind me. Tall. Wrong. Skin where there shouldn't be skin. A face that flickered between smiles like a slideshow running too fast. It didn't move. Just watched. And then, it nodded. Not in anger. In approval. Like I'd passed another test I never signed up for. The apartment didn't want to scare me. Not really. It wanted to see how far I'd been before I snapped. And now the rules weren't keeping me safe. They were keeping me theirs. I sat down on the floor, shaking. My body wasn't cold, but I was shivering. My thoughts weren't loud, but they weren't mine. And in that moment, I realized something awful. I was the only one in this building still pretending I didn't belong here. You don't break the rules in this place. The rules break you. I didn't sleep that night. The room was too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath just to hear mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching shadows shift across the floor, even though no lights were moving. I had broken the rule. I had answered the wall. And now the building was listening differently, closer, hungrier. That's when the door knocked. Once. Soft. Intentional. I didn't move. I didn't want to open it. I didn't even want to breathe. But my body stood up anyway. Not because I wanted to, because something had already decided I would. I opened the door, and she was there again. Clara. But this time she wasn't smiling. She wasn't still. She looked tired and older, like her face had aged 10 years overnight. She stepped in without permission, and the door closed behind her on its own, clicking into place like it had been waiting. She walked slowly, her shoes making no sound, like the floor had agreed not to betray her presence. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood in the middle of the room, turning her head as if listening to something I couldn't hear. I told them you weren't ready, she said finally. Her voice was different now. Not robotic, not sweet, but steady, heavy, as if each word had been weighed before spoken. I asked her what she meant, asked who they were. Her eyes didn't blink. The ones inside, the ones who built this place. It doesn't belong to you. It never did. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked when I asked her, what do they want? She looked at me like the question was a joke. Obedience, reverence, silence, the usual. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, folded, a new list, fresh ink. She laid it on the table and stepped back. "This is the next set of rules," she said, "for residents who've broken the first." I picked it up with shaking hands. The paper was warm like it had just been printed, or born. Revised occupancy terms. Unit 4B. Do not speak to Clara after 3 a.m. If your reflection smiles without you apologize out loud, never let the mirror go dark. When the hallway door knocks twice, ignore it. If it knocks 3 times, open it and step aside. Do not ask what lives above you. It hears curiosity as invitation. If you find teeth beneath your pillow, bury them. Quickly. If your phone rings from an area code you don't recognize, answer on the 3rd ring. But do not speak first. My voice was shaking when I asked, "Why me?" She looked at me like the answer should have been obvious. "Because you believed fast. You didn't resist. That makes you valuable." I backed away. My breath caught. My pulse jumped. "Are you one of them?" She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "No. I'm what's left when they're done." Then the lights flickered once. Twice. The hum returned low, pulsing bone deep. Clara turned to leave, her voice softer now, almost kind. "This apartment, it isn't punishing you. It's preparing you for what I asked." She stopped at the door. To belong. And with that, she stepped into the hallway. But the hallway wasn't right anymore. It stretched too far, bent upward. The ceiling was gone. In its place, stars, or eyes, or both. I closed the door, locked it, then bolted it. But it was too late. Not just to leave. Too late to forget. Too late to pretend. The floor beneath my feet felt different. Softer. Breathing. A little warmer than it should have been. The walls weren't walls anymore. They were witnesses. And they were waiting. Clara didn't return the next night. Or the night after. I left water outside the door. It stayed full. I listened for the hum in the walls. It went silent. No knocks, no flickers. Nothing. It should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Because now the absence itself was loud. I'd grown used to her presence, her strange timing, her cryptic warnings, her mechanical calm. And now that she was gone, it was like something had left the cage open. Not to let me out, but to let something else in. The apartment didn't feel quieter. It felt unmonitored, unsupervised. Like the teacher had left the room, and the classroom wasn't full of children anymore. It was full of mouths. That was the night the mirrors stopped reflecting me. It started with the bathroom. I walked in, turned on the light, and saw no one. Just the room. Toothbrush, sink, towel, but no me. I waved my hand. Nothing. Leaned in. Still nothing. Then I blinked. And the mirror blinked back. But only after I did. I moved. It copied. Late. Slightly wrong. Like it was buffering me through something not designed to hold human images. I backed away. Closed the door. Checked the hallway. Still no Clara. Still no sound. Just air that had turned viscous, thick enough to feel against your skin like it pushed back when you moved through it. The rules stopped updating. No new notes. No new instructions. Just the old list on my table now, slowly fading like ink bleeding into parchment. I tried to call for help. The phone worked for exactly 6 seconds. Then it rang. But not like a ringtone. It rang from inside the walls. A low analog chime like an office phone from the 90s buried behind drywall. I dropped it. The floorboards pulsed once like something enormous had just taken a step in a room far below. That's when the hallway changed. I opened the door to check, and the hallway wasn't mine anymore. The walls stretched taller. The numbers on the doors were wrong, repeating. 4B, 4B, 4B. No other units. Just copies. Infinite copies. I stepped out. The air was colder here, but not dead. It was alert. Watching. The sound of breathing came from nowhere and everywhere. My own breath fogged in the air. I took one step forward, then heard the first knock. Behind me. I turned. Nothing. Then another knock. Same rhythm, same pressure, but this time from the ceiling above me, then from below. They weren't following me. They were surrounding me. I ran back inside and slammed the door. But the room was different now. The ceiling cracked, slightly bleeding rust-colored dust. The window no longer looked out on the alley. It showed a black void filled with static like a TV tuned to a dead channel, but stretched across the sky. I screamed into the room, "What do you want?" And the walls replied with laughter. Not human laughter. Not angry. Not cruel. Just amused. Because I was the joke now. A man who asked questions in a place built to erase them. A man who begged for answers when the only rule that mattered was obedience. The mirror in the kitchen shimmered. A phrase appeared across the glass like condensation. "You are the rule now." I understood then Clara hadn't abandoned me. She'd completed her task. She was never the guardian. She was the trainer. And I was the next one. She didn't disappear. She graduated. And now they were testing if I was ready to replace her. I thought I could run. I thought if I timed it just right at 3:33 a.m. when the lights flickered hardest, when the hum dipped low, I could slip out the door, sprint down the hallway, and make it to the stairwell before they noticed. I was wrong. The door opened this time smoother than ever. No resistance. Almost like it wanted me to go. That should have been my first warning. I stepped into the hallway and everything looked normal. But the second I passed the first apartment on the left, my stomach turned. Not from fear, from recognition. The scuffed paint, the burned-out sconce, the water stain shaped like a moth on the ceiling tile. I'd already seen them. I kept walking. Apartment 4B appeared again. And again. Every 10 feet. Same door. Same number. Same exact sound of light buzzing above it. At first I thought I was walking in circles. I turned around, ran the other way. But it didn't matter which direction I moved. The hallway repeated, glitched. Infinite 4Bs stacked end to end, each one a perfect echo of the last. I opened one. Same furniture, same placement, but wrong. The mirror in this version was cracked hairline fractures like spider legs. The couch had an extra pillow that I'd never bought. And on the wall carved into the paint were the words, "You shouldn't have looked back." I slammed the door and tried another. This one smelled like bleach. The carpet was damp. The window showed a copy of me standing outside, eyes hollowed out, head tilted, Clara's tilt. I ran. Every time I opened a door, it got worse. One version had the ceiling dripping black fluid. Another had photographs of me on the walls, photos I'd never taken. One apartment was completely empty, except for a single chair facing the corner. And from the shadows, I swear I heard breathing. I kept moving, desperate, crying, whispering to myself, "It's not real. This isn't real." But that's when I understood. It was real, just not mine. The building hadn't trapped me. It had fractured me, split my reality into copies, forcing me to walk through every version of my failure. Each hallway, each 4B was a reflection of a different choice I hadn't made. A punishment for every time I hesitated. A lesson for every time I doubted. I stopped at the 7th version of 4B. This one had no door, just a mouth. A literal mouth, and the drywall lips stitched shut, twitching as if trying to speak. And in my own handwriting, scrawled in marker beneath it, "Stop speaking to yourself." That's when it clicked. This wasn't a haunting. This was a collapse. A reality loop architected by something that doesn't care if I survive, only if I learn. My mind broke, then not in some cinematic screaming kind of way. Quietly, precisely, like a clean snap of logic. I couldn't trust what I saw, couldn't trust time, space, or even memory. My thoughts felt echoed, delayed. I would think something and then a whisper would repeat it a second later, not from my head, but from somewhere above me. I dropped to the floor, hands shaking, eyes wide. The hallway pulsed. The building wasn't testing me anymore. It was rewriting me. And it was working. I didn't lose my mind in that hallway. I gave it away piece by piece until the door stopped asking for my permission to open. There was only one way left to go through the mirror. Not metaphorically, not psychologically, literally. Because at the end of the last hallway, beyond the final 4B, the hallway just stopped. No exit, no stairs, No window. Just a floor-length mirror hanging from the wall like it had always been waiting for me. The glass rippled like liquid when I stepped near. My reflection stood perfectly still. Too still. He didn't blink when I blinked. Didn't breathe when I gasped. He was waiting. He was smiling. Not maliciously. Not kindly. Just knowingly. I stepped forward. The apartment trembled, no dramatic quake, just a subtle shift like it was exhaling. And behind the mirror, I saw movement. Not a room. Not a reflection. Something deeper. Like an interior that didn't belong to this building, or any building. A dimension built entirely of thought memory obedience. Then came the voice. Not Clara's. Not the entity. It was my own voice. From inside the mirror. Come home. 2 words. Soft, gentle. I should have run. Should have screamed. But there was nothing left in me to resist. No map, no rule, no Clara, just me and me. And the echo of every rule I had broken, every question I had asked, every moment I dared to believe I still had a choice. I reached out. My hand touched glass. It was warm. The mirror didn't reflect anymore. It showed an apartment identical to mine, but darker, dimmer quiet in a way that felt complete. Finished. Occupied. There were candles lit in the corner. A chair facing the wall. And on the wall, etched in blood or ink or something in between, were the words, "Every rule broken opens a door." I stepped closer. My reflection didn't follow. He waited. I whispered, "What's on the other side?" He smiled. Clarity. And just like that, I understood. This wasn't punishment. It was process. The building hadn't chosen me to torment. It had chosen me to inherit. Every resident before me, Clara M., the voice in the wall, they weren't victims. They were prototypes. The mirror wasn't reflecting. It was inviting. You can't escape a home that grows inside your mind. The final blessing wasn't healing. It wasn't fortune. It was clarity the moment you realize none of this is about you because you were never the tenant. You were always the replacement. I reached toward the glass, and it opened. The door didn't lock behind me, because I was the one who locked it for whoever came next. I stepped through the mirror, not into light, not into darkness, into something in between. It wasn't cold, it wasn't warm. There was no floor, no ceiling, just a floating sense of endlessness wrapped in the illusion of stillness. Around me, fragments of thought drifted like dust motes. Old furniture, a photo of my mother, a receipt from my first job. None of them had been in my pockets, but all of them had been in my mind. This place wasn't built of bricks, it was built of memory, and now it was rewriting mine. Ahead of me was a chair, Clara's chair, facing a blank wall made of fog and static. On it sat a figure, not Clara, not me, but something in between wearing a human shape like a borrowed suit. It turned its head slowly. No face. Just a surface that rippled between images. Clara. Me. The landlord. My father. A stranger. A shape without identity, only function. And when it spoke, it used my voice. "Welcome home, Elliot." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was full of static, like every word I'd ever known had been redacted before I could form it. I tried to move. I couldn't. My feet were rooted in thought. My pulse was gone. And the figure stood. "You've reached clarity," it said. "Now comes consequence." Behind me, the mirror shut. Quiet. Final. No door. No exit. Just the shape of the man I used to be fading into fog. The walls of the space began to twist, reorganize. I saw them become rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, hallways, all of them leading back to Unit 4B. Different versions, parallel failures, each one repeating my hesitation in a different shape. "You weren't haunted," the figure said. "You were selected." I finally spoke. "Selected for what?" "To maintain what cannot be understood," it replied. "To contain what cannot be forgotten." And just like that, the truth hit me. Clara had been a guide, yes, but also a sacrifice. Every tenant in this place eventually becomes the keeper of it. The rules don't protect you. They train you to obey long enough for the system to decide you're ready. Clarity isn't freedom. Clarity is knowing you were never a person. You were a placeholder. The entity placed something in my hand. A list. Freshly inked. Same paper. Same scent. It read, "Rules for the next occupant. Unit 4B. Do not speak to the man in the mirror. If Clara appears, listen. If the walls hum back, you may only leave once you understand why you can't. Never ask what's behind the final door." I looked up. The chair was empty, because I was already sitting in it. And the apartment was already rebuilding itself around me. I didn't escape 4B. I became part of its architecture. You've listened this far. That means one of two things. Either you don't believe me, or you believe me just enough. That's how it starts, by the way. Not with conviction, with curiosity. You hear a voice online talking about rules they were forced to follow. You think it's fiction, a creepypasta, maybe even marketing. But a part of you pauses. A part of you wonders. What if I moved into a place like that? Would I follow the rules? Would I survive? Let me make this very clear. This isn't a story. It's a transfer. I was like you once, normal, angry, lonely. I thought moving into a cheap apartment with too many rules was just the beginning of my redemption arc. I didn't know it was the end of my identity. That every word I followed, every breath I took was being cataloged, evaluated, shaped. I don't remember when I stopped being me. I only remember when I stopped trying to be. Because when you live under supernatural rules long enough, you don't fear them. You become one of them. Now, I don't sleep unless permitted. I don't speak unless asked. I don't reflect unless called upon. I watch. I wait. I enforce. You probably think I'm exaggerating. You probably think this ends when you close the video. It doesn't. Not if the story felt too familiar. Not if you found yourself glancing at the mirrors in your own apartment while listening. Not if the air around you feels just a little thicker right now. Not if you start hearing humming. That's how it begins. The rules come later. Maybe in your mailbox. Maybe under your pillow. Maybe carved into the frost on your window tomorrow morning. They'll be short, specific, easy to ignore. But if you break them, something will notice. And it might already be watching. Through your screen, through your reflection, through your doubt. If this doesn't apply to you, forget it. Walk away. But if any part of this rings true, if something inside you remembers things you haven't lived, then I have bad news. You're next. Don't follow strange rules unless they feel familiar. If they feel familiar, you've already been chosen. I've stopped counting the days. Time inside the apartment doesn't move forward anymore. It moves around me, circling like a hawk. Sometimes I wake up and it's Monday 3 times in a row. Sometimes I sleep once and lose a week. But the walls remember. The apartment keeps track even if I don't. Sometimes I think I'm alone. But then the mirror twitches, just slightly, like a breath held a little too long. Sometimes the hallway hums again, but only after midnight. I still follow the rules. Not out of fear now, out of instinct. I don't question them. Don't write them down. I just know them. They change sometimes. Slightly. Subtly. As if 4B is adjusting itself like a spider reweaving its web for a new kind of prey. Once I thought I heard my old self crying behind the bathroom wall. But it wasn't crying. It was practicing my voice. I haven't seen Clara again. But I hear her. Not in words, in rhythm. In the way my thoughts pause before completing. In the way my breath sometimes matches footsteps I don't take. She's not gone. She's embedded, like I am. People move in across the hall sometimes. New faces, short-term leases, confused eyes. I smile at them. I watch. I wait. I note which ones read the fine print, which ones ask questions, which ones stay past the 3rd night. They never last. Most just disappear. The apartment doesn't kick them out. It replaces them, quietly, painlessly, as if they were never there to begin with. The walls repaint themselves. The mirrors forget. But I don't. Because I'm not a resident anymore. I'm part of the maintenance. 4B isn't a place. It's a pattern. It happens anywhere rules are ignored long enough to wake something up. You could be walking past a vacant unit tomorrow and feel that static on your skin. You could tour a rental and notice the mirrors have been replaced recently. You could find a sticky note on your nightstand with just 3 words, "Do not answer." And you won't remember why those words feel familiar until it's too late. Because once the apartment finds a way in, you don't invite it. It installs itself. And mirrors aren't for vanity. They're for observation. If you're watching this and your screen flickers after, don't panic. If your reflection lingers too long, don't touch it. If the lights hum in 3s tonight, don't speak. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock. You're not free. You're dormant. Until 4B needs you again. I used to think I was the only one. The chosen, the trapped, the final result of something cosmic playing house in a rundown apartment. But that was before I found the door without a number. It doesn't appear often, only on certain nights, when the hallway feels longer than it should, when the vents hum in reverse, when the air smells like static and rust. I passed it once by accident. It was where 4C should have been, but instead there was only wood, peeling, breathing, with a keyhole shaped like an eye. I didn't try to open it, not then. I just pressed my hand against the surface, and it pulsed. Behind that door I heard something move. Soft feet on carpet, whispered numbers, breathing that didn't belong to me. And then, my own voice, saying my name. I ran, but the sound followed, all the way back to 4B. And that night I dreamed of people, dozens of them, hundreds, all versions of me, but wrong. One had burn scars across his hands, another had no mouth. One wore a janitor's uniform and dragged a mirror on a chain. Another had empty eyes but still looked directly at me. They didn't speak, but they all mouthed the same word: repeat. I wasn't alone. I was one of many. 4B didn't select me. It pulled from a queue. Every failure spawns a shadow. Every ignored rule fractures a version. And some get left behind, not dead, not gone, just misfiled, archived, still echoing in the dark. 4B doesn't forget them. It keeps them in storage. Sometimes I hear them under the floorboards, whispers in my own cadence, laughter that ends on my breath, a dream where I'm someone else but still me. And when I wake up, I'm not sure who opened my eyes. Not all who vanish are gone. Some are just waiting to be overwritten. You thought this was a haunting? No. This is version control, and the mirror isn't a window. It's a backup system. You were never the one. You were just the latest. And now that you know that, ask yourself this: what happened to the ones before you, who also found the door? People always assume that supernatural things are chaotic, that hauntings are messy, that entities are erratic, that disappearances are random. But the more time I spend in 4B, the more I realize nothing here is accidental. Even your fear has been accounted for. The first time I noticed the schedule was when I started logging the knocks. Not just when they happened, but how they aligned. Every 3rd night, every 7th hour, every 9th second of stillness. Patterns. The kind of patterns you'd only see if you'd stopped being human long enough to notice them. That's when I realized the apartment isn't just alive, it's organized, maintained, curated. And the disappearances, they're not punishments, they're updates. Tenants don't go missing because they broke rules. They vanish because the system needs them to. Just like a computer clears cache. Just like a server reboots a corrupted file. You're not haunted. You're maintained. And when the system deems you obsolete, it doesn't scream. It doesn't knock. It just processes you. I once watched a man across the hall argue on the phone every night for a week. Angry, tired, distracted. He ignored the hums, slammed doors, played music too loud, and then one morning, he was gone. His door stood open, his shoes still by the welcome mat, coffee still warm, TV still on, but the air sterile, like someone had wiped him out clean. I asked the landlord. He smiled and said, "That unit was overdue. Overdue. like a task, like a ticket in a help desk queue. I went back inside, checked my own unit, and there it was. A yellow slip under my door. Maintenance scheduled 7 days. No name, no instruction, just a date. That night I didn't sleep, because I realized I wasn't living in an apartment. I was part of its code base, a temporary asset, a replaceable variable. And the rules, they aren't protections, they're patch notes. You think ghosts scream no, glitches wait, then they're resolved, and no one remembers you were ever there. Your vanishing was scheduled, and the apartment runs smoother now. I used to believe the rules were written to help me survive, that each line was a lifeline, each do not a warning, each never a shield against what waited in the dark. I followed them, I memorized them, I lived by them, and for a while it worked, or so I thought, until I noticed something no one else had. The rules were changing, slightly, incrementally, like software updates. Rule number 3 used to be, don't knock after midnight. Then one morning it became, don't answer. Knocks after 3:33 a.m. Not rewritten, not corrected, adjusted, personalized, like they were reacting to me. And that's when the realization hit me. The rules weren't written to protect me. They were written to measure me. Every time I obeyed, I was scored. Every hesitation was noted. Every pause between action and instinct was being timed, evaluated, graded. I wasn't avoiding death. I was participating in a behavioral test. Think about it. If the building wanted me dead, it could have taken me on day 1. The humming walls, the mirror, Clara, any of them could have swallowed me whole, but they didn't. They watched, because the true purpose of the rules isn't protection, it's profiling. The entity, whatever it is, doesn't just want a body. It wants a compliant mind, a pattern-following, fear-conditioned, docile vessel. Someone trained not to ask questions, just follow orders. The rules weren't about survival. They were formatting instructions. Every rule is a file. Every fear response is data. And once you've followed enough steps, once your brain has been molded into the correct obedience loop, you stop being a tenant, and you start being usable. By the time I realized it, it was too late. I didn't read the rules anymore. They appeared in my head before I could question them, and I followed them without thinking. Because thinking wasn't the goal. Following was. So if you're hearing this, if some part of your brain finds this familiar, if rules have appeared in your dreams or notes have shown up with your name, then listen closely. You're not being saved. You're being formatted. You weren't surviving the rules. You were submitting. And now you're ready for deployment. So that's the truth. Not the truth you wanted. Not the kind that frees you, but the kind that settles in your bones like cold air, quiet, permanent, undeniable. You were never listening to a warning. You were listening to a brief. Every word I've said, every scene I described, it wasn't meant to scare you. It was meant to prepare you. Because the system doesn't just trap people, it transfers them. The rules aren't dead text. They're active code. And every time you understand them, every time you feel them pulling at the edge of your thoughts, that's when it knows you're compatible. You might still think you're safe, that this was just a creepy voice and a spooky tale. But when the lights flicker tonight, when you see your reflection hesitate, when you find a folded note under your pillow with your name on it, you'll remember this story. And it'll be too late to stop what's already been installed. Because stories don't end when you stop listening. They end when someone else starts living them. And you're already on the list.